Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host here, and today I'm bringing you a knitwear designer from Alberta, Canada, Corrine Lung. Welcome to my channel.
Thank you. Welcome.
Tell me, like, your story. When did you even start to knit?
I started to knit in brownies. So when I was joining the Girl Guides, I was about 7 years old. And of course, one of the badges they had was always one of those crafty ones. And I hadn't knit, but my mother knit a lot. And I needed to learn how to knit because she was really a fantastic knitter. I, on the other hand, was making that silly little square um, garter stitch, and it was awful. I do remember it was a worsted wool and it was a dark forest green, and I just could not get the stitches. But over the years, you keep going along and crafting and knitting and sewing, and my mother was the biggest influence on that. So, yeah, over the years, I've been knitting on and off socks, mitts, um, even some tops. So,
Well,
yeah,
when you think
journey.
about the way your mom was knitting, was it more for practical reasons, or was it recreational kind of like hobby where you meditate and watch TV and like get some peace out of it?
Well, when my mother was knitting, it was back in the 60s and the 70s, and there wasn't a lot of money in the family. So, um, one of the hobbies that you would do would be knit. And she mostly made baby clothes and blankets, and then she would do afghans and things like that as the patterns came more developed through the years. I still have some of her afghans. I just can't let them go. She has since passed, but I just can't release them. So,
I
yeah,
mean, when you knit now, do you feel that connection with your mother? Do you feel like that generational thread?
I do. And I honestly, every stitch that I do, I honestly enjoy every stitch. I'm counting all the stitches all the time because I'm doing lace. And I often wonder, and I've looked at the patterns from before, I've often wondered if she would have enjoyed knitting with circular needles, and if she would have enjoyed making the own patterns herself, because I did inherit a box of knitting patterns from her, and I culled some, and I really had to keep the ones that were special to me and that she had made. I looked at them and I realized she had made these patterns. But pattern today is way different than pattern from before.
How so?
Yeah. How so? I think the patterns in the booklets before presumed that you know a lot and you just keep running along, and you can read paragraphs on how to do the Kitchener stitch, and it's not easy to remember. And when you're reading it in a paragraph, but when you're reading it in steps, like we currently write, step one, do this, step two, do that, it's a lot easier. I have my original sock pattern book, and it's a good one, but I wouldn't want to make those again.
Well, let's talk about your knitting journey. Do you remember some of your first, like after that washcloth, right? Like what was the first pattern or first knitting project that you were actually proud of?
It was a knobby yarn, and I don't remember what kind it was, but it was a lace, just simple little top, no sleeves, just a little bit of a ribbing around. But the problem with that one, it was too see-through for me. I was a little bit modest. Plus, my bind off at the bottom was too tight. And so it never felt good, and I never wore it that well. Knowing what I know today, I would certainly redo it. And I still love the colors. But of course, that garment is long gone.
But when you think about knitting for yourself, like is that still have practical aspect for you, or do you treat it as something meditative and something that just brings you peace?
Yes, I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot. I like to say maybe design something, but I also have to have a personal project in the background. And sometimes I'll see pattern release, and I go, oh, those are some new skills I could learn. I could make that. I really like that top, and then I will do it myself.
Well, your first pattern on Ravelry came out in 23.
Yes.
Have you designed before that?
No, but during the pandemic, a bunch of my friends, we were getting into a little bit more artsy and crafts again. People were getting into sewing. I was a big sewer back in the days when I was working in the offices. And one friend said, here, knit this shawl. And then I said, you know, I actually want to knit socks. So I started knitting socks. And then I realized I needed to customize them for myself. And then I wanted to make them prettier. And so that's kind of how it all started for me.
Well,
And then I thought,
talk me through your first design process. Like you decided that you're gonna customize those socks. What made you decide to publish the pattern, and how was that learning how to write the pattern and how to edit it and how to test it and how to publish it and all things Ravelry?
that's a lot of work. And I guess I started with the free patterns on socks, and I started making socks for every person in the family. And then I got to watching Knititude, and she was doing patterns. And then I thought, well, I do something different than her. I do socks. And so I would ask her the occasional question, and I would listen to what she was saying. And then I was learning about what software you put into patterns and how you would write them. And so I started doing that. And then I thought, well, what do you do when you want to do a lace pattern? Because I know Excel and Word, but I can't get those funny little symbols in there. So a little digging around, and I found Stitch Fiddle was working for me. It was free for the first few patterns. And then I just kept going through that. And the more I saw, it never happened all at once. It just kept adding on and on. And then you're learning about test knitting and learning about more how to gauge and how to grade the patterns. So it was very interesting, and I still feel like I'm learning a lot.
What did you think was like the most difficult thing of that whole process? Because I just went through like my first publishing of my first pattern, and let me tell you, I thought it was ridiculously simple to like put this pattern together, and boy was I wrong. And it took me like forever and a half to just have like the whole process done correctly, right? Not just writing down the
Yeah.
instructions, but like putting the chart together and writing the written instructions for that lace chart, because not everybody likes to deal with charts, and finding testers, and then making sure that, you know, out of like 18 testers that I asked, there was like 8 people who could finish on time, you know, and dealing with tech editor and sending her revised copies only to figure out that I forgot to put 2 sentences there that like was most, you know, necessary. What was your like process like that? You know, like was it difficult for you also?
It was difficult because you, like you were saying earlier, you think it's easy because other patterns you've had have been, I don't know, 2 to 4 pages long, maybe 8. And then you start writing it out yourself, and then you start to get feedback even from your testers. Well, I like to look at it online, so you need to do it in 2 columns. And I'm thinking, I do, you know, everything. And maybe one of the most frustrating things in the very beginning was about testers, and that testers would just go silent on you or ghost you. And you think, oh, you committed. I thought you had a good background on that. And I understand life gets in the way, but yeah, not having them there and giving feedback is good. And then other people are quite diligent about it. So that's good.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, socks seem like an easy accessory until you get into it, because Kate Atherley, another Canadian who was on my channel, actually wrote a whole book about how to customize the sock to fit your foot, right? So like when you decided to write a sock pattern, did you underestimate how involved it is for all the sizing?
Yes, absolutely. Because I mostly do, well, in fact, I only do the regular heel flap, and just getting the numbers right and getting the heel centered properly is a challenge in itself, and making sure that if it looks good to me, does it look good to everybody? So yes, the picking up stitches, the number of stitches, how many to go through the gusset, and then if you're throwing a lace pattern on top, trying to make sure that it's centered on the foot, or the cables centered properly, how to make it all the best is a challenge. I think hats are a lot easier.
Well, you posted that first pattern. It hit Ravelry. Was it immediate financial success for you?
No, not at all.
And the
Eh,
reason I'm asking so many questions, because a lot of people toying with the idea of becoming a designer, and they thinking, well, is it really that hard? Like what's involved and how many steps and how do I do it? And so since you did all of that relatively recently, like that's one of the reasons I want to know your take on.
Well, it was probably disheartening because I would see the success rate, and then I would go on Ravelry and it would say something like, there has been 660,000 patterns released. And then I realized, well, I think mine are special, but does everybody else? So therein you get that issue with it. And then also the price point for patterns I'm discovering can be all over the board, but I do know for sure if it's a heavily discounted and free pattern, it'll get snapped up. And there are boards out there that will point to free patterns. So all that work and the free pattern doesn't really pay for your photography, your tech editing, your subscriptions to um, software programs. So yeah, it can be disappointing, but if you have good commercial success, that would be great. And I would say at this point, um, yeah, it's not that lucrative.
Well, when you first published this pattern and it didn't go blockbuster immediately, how did you pick up yourself and said, you know what, it doesn't matter. I want to do another pattern. I'm gonna do a next design and next design and next design. Like, how do you convince yourself to continue?
I'm semi-retired. I like to keep busy. And then I sat there and thought, maybe I just need more patterns and I will just keep going because I have a lot of ideas in my mind. And every time I see yarn, beautiful, glorious yarn, and you have your favorites, right? You think, oh, this is really great. I will just find something beautiful to make that with. And then you're following people on Instagram and you see different colors. And I'm not stopped. Sometimes I do have to take a breather and make another outfit for myself. But there's always so much in my brain that I would like to do.
So how do you come up with the ideas? Like, where is it, like the chicken or the egg, right? Like, do you see yarn and you come up with the idea? Do you hike through those lovely mountains of yours that I see all over Instagram and think like, oh, that would, I need a martini mitten.
Well, you know, it's the yarn that I usually fall in love with first, and then I have to think about what I'd like to do with that. But being in the mountains, it gives me a pause, and I will take some knitting out there if I'm going on a little break or retreat. I don't hike and knit because knitting lace and hiking and walking doesn't really work. But sitting on a rock and having your lunch and having knitting is good. Um, I, one of my favorite patterns is the My Martini uh, mittens or the hat, and it was just so much fun. And that one I actually had done um, just thinking about my sister and our love of camping and having a cocktail out there. And of course, I love blue, so I did make that, and it was just kind of a novelty, but it was well received.
Well, when you look at other designers, do you see them as like source of inspiration, as like a learning point, as your competitors? Where do they fall?
They fall everywhere. Usually, well, probably one, I'm not going to name names, probably one that I kind of stumbled on. I said, oh, I think that person makes exactly some of the same things that I do, but does more tops. And I thought, wow, I don't want to copy, but I should just kind of keep it on the side to make sure that I'm not duplicating that. But I do more socks and small accessories. So, but when I look at people who are doing really big stuff like um, petite knit or knititude, or I know I'm not saying her name right, the gal who models your Sweet Surrender shawl, Johi.
Oh, Jorge Locatelli.
Yes, I mean you look at hers and you go, how beautiful. Yeah, how beautiful. And then she has so much in her repertoire. I go, she keeps going. She's got lots of ideas. Me
Right.
too.
Well, do you think like the more you do it, the more ideas you get? Like, are you afraid you're gonna run out of the ideas?
Occasionally I worry about that, but then all of a sudden, I will see something and I'll be inspired by that. So shopping is one way of looking at things, or a whole holes in my wardrobe that I may need. Like I need an ankle sock because I want to wear it with Birkenstocks. Or I mentioned that I am working part-time in a designer clothing store. And sometimes the knitwear that comes in, whether it's a summer knit or a winter knit, I go, oh, that's a lovely pattern, how they put it together. It's done by machine.
Right.
So do I like that? Do I like the color scheme together? Does it make me feel good to put something like that together?
Well, so
So
far you stuck to accessories. You're mostly known for your accessory patterns. Are you toying with the idea to go into garments?
I'm scared. I'm
Is it because
scared
of
with
the grading?
the grading, yes, because I do have a shawl pattern getting ready to come out this fall, but it's the grading that really makes me wonder if I want to do that.
Well,
It's big.
I wanna go a little deeper on that because I've met this lady at H&H, and she has a company that manufactures yarn in China, and she also has design like in-house designers that do the some designs for her yarn. And she sent me one of the patterns, and it's designed for size extra small. And I was like, that's amazing and it's really beautiful, but I am not size extra small, nor have I ever been since I was 11, probably. So there is this expectation today in today's world of knitting that you're gonna have like 8 to 10 sizes. You're gonna go from extra small to like, you know, the biggest bust you can imagine. And then there is other places in the world where it's totally normal to do just one size. And if you look at the old and, you know, like retro patterns and old magazines, they all were for one size. Do you think we as knitters sort of lost that ability to adjust everything to fit us? And how much of it is a designer's responsibility to teach that?
Oh boy, that's a big one, isn't it? I didn't know that patterns came out with one size. I always remember them coming out small, medium, large. And speaking to China, an extra small would fit someone there, but probably an extra large would not fit a North American person. Our sizes and our standards are substantially different.
Right.
We have grown. Um, so can people make up their own customized sizes from someone? I would say not in today's world could they do that unless they're very experienced, certainly not beginners. In fact, I wouldn't want to myself to do that. I don't know.
Well, I remember like talking to Jorge actually about it, and she mentioned that like somebody asked her, are you as famous in Argentina as you are in the US? And she said, oh no, nobody knows me in Argentina because they can knit. They don't need patterns. And it's like, it's sort of, on one hand, we holding hand, right? Like we taking step by step, we're writing written instructions for the chart. We're assuming that the person knows pretty much nothing. We're assuming that this pattern is written for like absolute beginner and they can still knit it. And I like part of me wondering, like, is it the right thing to do, right? How much
I
do you,
guess,
how much information do you put in your patterns? Like how much do you hold hands of your customer?
yeah. Um, I think I'm holding a lot. Although, my sister was doing one of my patterns and she said to me, you never told me the instructions for SSK. And I said, oh, there, it's a slip, slip knit. And she said, but you still didn't describe it. And I said, okay, but there's YouTube videos. So I had that awareness that what is super beginner and what is beginner, and are we going down a path when you promise or you say to someone you have to give them more and more information, and yeah, maybe it's a rabbit hole. Maybe we're putting everybody onto 10-page instructions when it could be quite simple if you were.
Actually, the sleep sleep knit is a funky one because I had one person asking a question about it and she was like, I slipped 2 stitches and then I knitted the third stitch. It didn't occur to her to knit those 2 stitches through the back loop because nowhere in sleep sleep knit did it say that you're supposed to knit those 2 stitches.
Exactly, exactly. But I think YouTube is very helpful. But if you're doing a pattern, do you want to do your own YouTube links to every move? I don't know.
What's
For a $10 pattern, that's a lot of work if you're selling small amount of patterns.
right? Well, what's your take on that? Do you see yourself putting every tutorial on YouTube or do you put links to other channels? There is handmaster knitters like, like Suzanne Bryan, for instance, or Very Pink Knits. Like you can look up pretty much every technique and everything. Would you put like a link to their channels or do you think every designer has something to show and people will respond to your video differently than they would react to theirs?
Well, at this point, I haven't put any links in mine, but if I was going to, I would just go to my favorites, like Very Pink Knits, and make those connections there. I don't see myself today, not saying never, making my own video tutorials on that. So,
Tell me how you decide like what you're going to work on next. Like, do you consider, because like being in retail business, it's all very seasonal, right? Do you
mhm.
consider seasonality or the idea just pops in and regardless of where you are, you're going to work on that one? And do you work on more than one project at the time, like when you design?
Well, I have, I'm sure like everybody else, I have a stash and then I start putting them in little bags on what I want to do. And then I have to balance off what I think I'm going to use this yarn for, design wise, versus is there something in it for me to wear personally? Like I want to try a new technique, I want to try a new top. So I start lining them up in sequence on my dresser and work through it that way. And sometimes I have 6 deep, and then I realize, oh, it's coming up fall. I should do a fall outfit pretty soon, in like 3 to 6 months in advance. So, yes, I do ankle socks at the nick of time this spring. And then I'm thinking what I've got for my wrap coming up. It's for late fall or for the fall. And I'm thinking I've been working on it all spring. So I'm all mixed up. It just whatever comes along, whatever I feel like I need to work on or whatever I have time for.
Well, let's talk about that yarn stash. How big are we talking?
Okay, it's not as big as the one behind you. And I have 3 big buckets, and I do have them laid out. Mostly fingering yarns because that's what my love is of socks, and I like um, scarves and all that mitts in fingering ways. So
But when you
no,
buy yarn, like, do you buy it with specific project in mind? Do you buy because you like the color, the texture, or something?
mostly the color and the textures first. So there's a couple of independent dyers here in Canada that I really like. Brittany at Crux Fibers and Marissa at Fantasy Fiber Company. So they're really close. They'll have specials coming up where it's seasonal. So I like to do that. And then my favorite local yarn store, Ancient Arts, they also do their own in-house um, dyeing, and they will be at Knit City as well. Everybody seems to be there in Calgary coming up.
Have you been to Knit City before?
No, no, not at all. It's the first time coming to Calgary this August, so hopefully I can squeeze something in there. I do have other commitments, so unfortunately, but I will try to get in there to see the people I haven't seen. I see online only. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the community. What do you get out of Instagram or going to those events? And how did that change your life?
Um, Instagram it was a good distraction or enhancement, I have to say, because you would see great ideas and knitting tips. So if someone posts something and I will repost it and call it knitting tip of the day or tip of the day. And I really like those and I try to save them. I like to see what's coming up in different sections. Some people get into their book clubs as well. I'm not much on a book club idea, but I do like feeling of community and meeting with the other people. I also do belong to a group here in town that meets a couple of times a month to knit, and it's all various different levels. Because I work on Saturdays, I usually can only go to their meeting once a month when I'm around, but it's lots of fun. Everybody's chatty, and they're from people all around the world. So some people are from Ireland and Scotland and mostly from Calgary.
Well,
So everybody's retired.
Calgary is a cold place to be in the winter. What's your favorite knitwear to wear?
My favorite knitwear to wear. The really thick hat. So my martini hat. And I also have some, I don't remember the name of the yarn, but it's from the east coast of Canada. It might be Briggs and Little. Is that the one? I may have messed that up. But anything that's alpaca holds a lot of heat in, and it's really good. Warm without being itchy. So if I was going to say my favorite yarn to wear, absolutely cashmere, but the next favorite is alpaca. So when I'm talking to people in the retail store and they wonder if it's itchy, me knowing all about the yarns myself and what I like to wear, that's very helpful.
Right. Well, when you're not working or when you're not knitting, what else do you love to do?
Oh, I love to go hiking in the mountains or cross country skiing. So that's my Tuesday event. We like to do that. And then camping in the summer. So yeah, you can knit by the campfire.
Yeah, absolutely. How much time do you knit every day? And there are other days when you don't knit.
Oh, most days I knit, I would say um, evenings mostly. So after having dinner, usually around 6:37, I can knit right till 9 or 10. So a few hours a day. There's not many days that I don't get to knit. And when we're traveling in a vehicle, I like to knit.
Yeah. Does knitting ever frustrates or stresses you out?
Yes. So when I'm on a pattern, and I don't know, sometimes you find that you have to do things a few times to get the pattern right, or even if it's your pattern or that you're designing, and sometimes other people's patterns, sometimes it just needs to be done twice to get it fine-tuned a little bit better and flowing a little bit better. So yeah, that can take a little more time than you actually really want, but in the end, it's okay. It's all knitting time.
What's your relationship with swatching? Because
Awesome.
especially when it comes to accessories, right? Sometimes it's not that crucial, but as a designer, you expect it to swatch and do the gauge and all that stuff. Do you love it, or is it an, necessary evil?
We'll say that it's on that necessary evil. I sometimes feel like I need to become familiar with the yarn if it's a new yarn to me, and I definitely have to go through that. And then sometimes I'm quite amazed at how, after blocking, it looks and might be problematic. I would say that if I've used a yarn before in a sock pattern, I don't feel it all that necessary to re-swatch because I'm very familiar with it, and I will just use the chart or the stockinette to figure it out a little bit better. But if it's a bigger garment, I make a bigger swatch. So yeah, all of it. Necessary evil.
Besides martinis, what else do you like to eat at the campgrounds?
At the campgrounds. Well, in Girl Guides, I was a Girl Guide leader for a while. I learned to make doughboys, and it's something that not everybody knows. It's kind of like a s'more thing, but not. So you get a big stick, wrap it in foil, and then you take the Pillsbury crescent rolls, the triangles, you wrap it around, and then stick that in the fire so that it cooks. And it kind of makes like a little cup. When it's cooked off and you're rotating it and getting it nice and golden brown. When you take the cup off, you fill it up with peanut butter and chocolate chips, and some people will put a jam in it or marshmallows. And most people say, I would never eat that. And they'll say, kind of looks bad. And then all of a sudden they have one and they need another one. Do you have any more of those? Yes.
Well, I just learned something new. I never heard of it.
Yeah. So it's a doughboy. It's very, very popular at Girl Guide camps.
Does
Yeah.
it go well with martini?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Or another cocktail, that'd be good too. But yeah, it's a dessert. So yeah.
Well, what's on your needles now, and what's in your plans for the nearest future?
Oh, okay. I'll show you my martini socks.
Oh, that's
So I
beautiful.
just finished that. I have yet to write up the pattern, and you know how writing up patterns can be a little bit onerous, and then grade it. But so I've done that. And my martini socks. And then the next one is, can you see this?
Oh, that's gorgeous.
So this is the DK weight with on the sides, it's fingering weight, and I'm beading it. So I'm just running up the edge. So it's
That's so beautiful.
oh, thank you. So it's Ancient Arts yarn, and they were so beautiful to sponsor me on that.
They have
Local.
beautiful yarn. I just with them at the H&H. I mean, they were on my channel before, but like I met with them in person in H&H, and it was like wonderful to see that yarn and touch it for myself.
Yeah, so this colorway is Le Chat Noir, and I picked the two together because they seem to be, I wanted to make it elegant and they seem to match off, and I don't know. So it was a big project. So it's good.
So when do you expect that pattern to come out?
I'm gonna say October, October-ish. Write it up, get a call on
We'll,
Tester
we'll,
Chat.
we'll stay tuned for that. I'm gonna put all the information about you and how people can find you and your designs in the description of this video. So guys, just you know what to do. We've been through it. Follow, like, share, put the design in favorites, that helps the algorithm, or put it in your queue, that also helps the algorithm, and show Corrine some love from Fiberchats. Tell her hello from Fiberchats. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Corrine. Thank you for being my guest today. It was lovely to get to know you.
Thank you, Irina. Thank you very much.